On the agenda tonight, we're going back to 2007 to take a look at Keane live at the O2 to see if the vocal has been auto-tuned. Hello, Phil here from Wings of Pegasus and welcome to another analysis video. If you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. First of all, a bit of background behind the reason for this video. I received an email recently from somebody talking about pitch correction auto-tune and the videos that we've done on the channel, and they said a performance they go to frequently is this one of Keane at the O2 in 2007, and they asked me if I could take a look at it and make a video on it, because if they found out that the vocal was auto-tune, then they'd be very disappointed and distraught and all those kinds of things. The first thing to mention is that generally when somebody says about a voice being auto-tuned or pitch corrected, it's just an opinion. They're just saying it because they think it has happened, whereas seeing it happening is a whole different ballgame. That's why we do these analysis videos, so that we can see on screen the graph, which is set to 440 Hz tuning, which is the same tuning as auto-tune, and auto is automatic, so it means that if the vocal is getting snapped to these lines and constantly sticks to these lines, then we know that it has been through a process of making that happen. Just based from all of the videos that we've done on the channel, the hundreds of videos that we've looked at great singers, they've only ever been stuck to the lines when it has been auto-tuned. So anyway, we will jump into this, and it's just going to be the isolated vocal. We're going to be bringing in other performances as a reference as well, but I will of course be jumping into it, and you can go and watch the videos independently if you just want to watch this performance or hear the songs in their entirety, because this is an analysis. So let's jump into it.
You say you wander your own land.
And there's so much in just that first phrase that we hear in the first verse. And this is right at the beginning of the gig, by the way, from 2007. When I literally first heard this verse in the performance, and not putting it through pitch monitoring software, anything like that, I thought it sounded auto-tuned to my ears, but they are very sensitive. But checking out lots of other performances, I then knew that Tom had it in his locker to be really accurate pitch-wise. It was just the mechanical sound of it as to why I thought this was. As I listened on, I then realised that they've actually somehow managed to get this to sound quite obviously auto-tuned in places, but then allowed some of the vocal to be where it was on the night. And then I think they've applied pitch correction as well, but they've done it really badly so that you can tell there's auto-tune in particular places. But I'll let it play through.
You're aching, you're breaking.
I mean, when we start seeing this kind of thing now in the second verse, being absolutely stuck to that line, holding that note, again, it just starts to speak of being a bit too accurate for my liking.
And I can see the pain in your eyes.
And that's the weird part, is that they've left this untouched, being flat of the C4, but then it sounded quite obviously auto-tuned on the E4.
Everybody's changing and I don't know why.
And there we know it's auto-tuned, and I know it's auto-tuned because at some points during the live performance, Tom's voice will be slightly flat, will be slightly sharp, and it means that the processor has to work harder the further he is from the note. And this F4 got absolutely stuck to this line. It was probably a little bit flat or sharp. It probably had more expression in it. That's the crux of it at the end of the day, that auto-tuning takes out a lot of that expression. But then the way we've come down to the D4 and the B3 and up to the C4, and because we've got a bit of reverb on there, it then kind of decays away a little bit flat. But this whole phrase, I mean, not only does it sound like it's been squashed with auto-tune, but look at, and I'm going to get this on the screen a little bit bigger. Hopefully you can see this a little bit more clearly. this little ascension we have, this, I don't know whether you can see this little notch here that is registering as the D sharp. And we'll just take it back again and have a listen, because if you're really zeroed in on this, you can hear that for a split second before it then gets corrected. And the reason why this is happening is because auto-tune is trying to get anything it hears to a particular note. And you can set the onset so that auto-tune only grabs a noise and snaps it to a note after a particular amount of time. For example, 20 milliseconds or something. But it grabbed that note and tried to, because it was a slide, it wants to make this all into a note. And this part, it just decided to make a D sharp 4 as it ascended. But have a listen, see if you can spot it.
Everybody's...
I mean, it does sound quite mechanical. And here we've got na. So that's the note. So when he's sliding up, it's like going na, na, na. And this is the notch. So we get na. It's that really quick correction of the noise that it's hearing. And the reason that we know it's auto-tuned was because Tom isn't doing this with his voice. He's never done it with his voice in this song. And there's no reason to go to the na, the D sharp 4, na. It's actually snapped it here to a note that is irrelevant to the melody and the key of what he's singing in. It should be na, na, going from a major scale note to another major scale note, but here is na. It's a minor. So, I mean, it's part of the minor scale, but we won't get into all of that. So it's even snapped it to something that's irrelevant, but it shows that it's just a computer trying to snap to this graph. I've got another performance here that we can load up. Let's have a listen to this and listen to the way that Tom sings it.
Since everybody's changing.
I mean, you can tell a live vocal straight away, but he goes, he kind of starts down there, he goes, and slides up really quickly. And it's the sliding that the auto-tune had a problem with. So, I mean, at this point, yeah, we can say that unfortunately, the whole of the 2007 live performance that's on YouTube and the official released DVD and Blu-ray and all that kind of stuff, it is auto-tuned throughout, which is going to be sad news for Keane fans. But the joke is that he doesn't need it.
Since everybody's changing and I don't know why.
And you might be able to notice here, even though we just jumped into a random spot of the song, we're slightly flat up here with the F4, and then that na, the C4, again, we're just below the note, but when you're listening to the performance, you don't notice this kind of thing, because more often than not, the best note isn't on these lines, because, I've said it a million times, music doesn't work like this, but 440 Hz tuning does, and auto-tune does. They've also allowed other bits of the performance through, which, just... The reason they've done that is to try and hide the fact that they've auto-tuned it. So they're trying to hide it, but by trying to hide it, they've made it even more obvious that it's happening, because you get random bits of just 100% auto-tune, and then random bits of a natural voice, and then random bits of what sounds like pitch correction. So yeah, I mean, we will listen to this a little bit more, but it's really obvious.
Sing it for us, London! So little time!
And there, again, we heard that little flip into the chorus. Obviously, they can't put his talking voice through auto-tune. Well, you could, but they didn't do it on that. And this is, by the way, all post-processed. Tom and the guys aren't using auto-tune on their live performances. This is the production team that have done it afterwards. And it raises that question of, why do the production team think that they can make it sound better than Tom's voice already is? It's like Tom is already super accurate with his voice throughout loads of live performances. I even went back to 2004 when they first released this song to look at one of his performances on the radio, and obviously they're just promoting this new single, to see how accurate he was all the way back in 2004. Let's have a listen to this. And by the way, the mic at this particular radio performance was awful. It sounds like he's singing into a sock, but we will have to do away with that.
You wander your own land.
So look at his natural voice. I mean, he's pretty much bang on the E4, slightly descending with the note and then slightly sharp with the C4. But, I mean, if you were to go far enough away, this would look like it's just dead on the lines. A3 here, we are sharp. But you don't really take that in, especially with the instrumentation going on in the background. So he's already this accurate back in 2004. And I actually think he got more accurate. And I do have more recent performances. Let's go into one from a radio performance, I think in maybe 2016.
Breaking, you're breaking, and I can see the pain.
So we can see that, like I said, Tom has this in his locker to be this accurate, just bang on the E4. But then he's flat of the E4 ever so slightly. You won't notice it, especially in the context of the song with all the instruments going on. But you can see when we're looking at it at this kind of detail that he's flat the second time round. So it's just looking like a natural voice, which it is. But he is so accurate that you think, why would you ever want to or feel the need to try and make this sound better? It already sounds great. The other irony is that in the live performance, they've auto-tuned it. So it means that the notes are even more accurate than the original record that was released. I say record, that's just something that I say, having been brought up on records. But the original song, MP3, whatever you want to refer to it as, was less accurate than the auto-tuned live version. And the live version, when they performed it, it wasn't auto-tuned. He would have been hitting the notes like he did in, you know, the radio performance, for example. Now, the thing to mention about the studio performance is that this is undoubtedly Tom's voice that has been just either comp taked, so he's done lots of different takes of this vocal, and then they've taken the best parts of, or the most accurate parts of his vocal. But he has this kind of thing in his locker anyway to be this accurate, so he doesn't need auto-tune.
Think about it, I don't see how you can.
And that's what's interesting, that he was bang on the C4 and then drifted sharp. That wouldn't happen with auto-tune. So again, when people listen to the original, they are seeing that as the optimum. I mean, it was produced in the studio, he sang it in the studio, it's controlled conditions, it's the best vocal you're ever going to get being in the studio, and then applying any pitch correction, all that kind of stuff afterwards, but not auto-tune. So people, when they go to watch a live performance, in an ideal world, they'd love a vocal that was as good as the studio version with all of that expression in there, but they don't mind if it's just a little bit flat, a little bit sharp, because it's a live performance. I think everyone accepts that. But what's happened here is Keane have performed live, everyone's loved it because of course Tom was really accurate live, and then the production team or a producer has thought, I know, yeah, that was probably as good as the studio album vocal, but I'm going to make it better, or better in my opinion, than the studio vocal that people already love. And the decision for that is going to be mine, because I think it's going to sound better if I apply auto-tune. So this is the problem that we've got nowadays, is that producers, and it might be a team of producers, are making artistic decisions on things that they think sound better, or even one person thinks sounds better. But that one person didn't sing the song. They didn't sell the millions of copies of that particular song for how they thought it should sound. It sold millions because of how Keane made it sound, with their artistic expression and Tom's voice and their, I mean, just great compositional ability, writing great songs, but just the way that they did it in the studio and do it as a band, that's what sold millions of copies and the fans want. They don't want somebody's opinion of the song and then for that person to change the sound of that song and that vocal to their ear, because they didn't make it. They didn't sell millions of copies with their version of how they think the song should have sounded. I think the more you listen to the 2007 performance, the more the auto-tune jumps out at you. Once you've heard it's been snapped to that D sharp 4, but we'll listen on.
Trying to make a move just
Straight away, that move again, it's snapping it to, I think that F4? Actually, it distinguished between the E4 and the F4 a little bit too cleanly. It didn't sound natural, that ascension.
trying to make a move just
Yeah, and the fact that it comes in dead on with the F4 immediately afterwards just, yeah, gives it that sound of being a bit manipulated.
to stay in the
Hey, and there we had it again. It tried to snap a note there that didn't exist on the B3.
game.
I mean, it's all over this.
In the
There we go. So what happened there is between this B3 and then it lost where it was and snapped it to the B3 from an A3. It's trying to get literally a tone lower. So that's why you hear that flip, because the auto-tune is doing something here that human vocal cords can't do. They can't move that quickly to snap to these positions. You can hit notes with breaks in between, and we've seen some great classical singers doing that, hitting notes with that staccato. But holding a note, which basically, I mean, this is a lot of long notes being held.
make a move just to stay in the
And that's why that whole phrase, stay in the, he's not going, stay in the, and changing, the way that he's singing that and going to different notes. He's holding a note, but the auto-tune thought that it was down here somewhere and then corrected itself. So that really quick wobble, again, as soon as you start hearing this kind of thing, 100% you can say that this is auto-tuned. It's not an opinion. We're not only hearing it, we're seeing where the auto-tune threw a wobbly and didn't know where it was going and then snapped back again. So, I mean, to me, it is really a sorry state of affairs that you can go to a gig and hear the vocal as it is live, but then whenever you pick up, I was going to say the DVD, but even watch the performance on YouTube of the gig that you attended, the vocal will sound different because it's been auto-tuned or pitch corrected. And given that this was 17 years ago, we can say that it was already part of the industry. It was like an industry standard back then. So any live performance that you watch now, how can you trust that the vocal is the vocal that was produced on that particular night without being manipulated? And I mean, the rabbit hole goes even deeper than this, because then we have overdubbed performances, which is when a band will play live and then they will go into the studio and record everything again in time with what they did on that live performance, and then that'll get released. The audio that's been recorded in the studio will get released with the live footage, but it'll all be called live. But he might not get credit for this because people will hear a live performance from 2007 and hear that it's auto-tuned and might not like his voice because, oh, he uses auto-tune. I'm not into those kinds of singers. But, Tom is a great vocalist, and like I said, he's just really accurate vocally, and I've always known that and thought that about his voice. So to hear him being auto-tuned, I mean, it falls under that same heading as, Randy Meisner and Freddie Mercury as well. Auto-tuning voices like those, and Tom's voice, who's really accurate, auto-tuning him, you think, why are people doing this? Because we're just ending up with voices that all sound the same, because everybody's voice has a unique vocal expression to it because of where they hit the notes. We're getting everybody's voices together and literally putting it all through the same machine, and it comes out with the same processing on it. Every voice is now, for example, hitting an E4 on the line. Every single voice you put into this machine will get spat out as being on the line. But in reality, the actual singer's voices never all hit the note in the same place. Some are sharp, some are flat. Like this, the E4. We go down through the note. So we're probably, 5 cents sharp, and then we end up maybe 5 cents below the note. But all of that has been taken out with auto-tune, so that every singer, if they did this similar kind of thing, they now no longer do that anymore. They do what auto-tune does, which is just sing along in a straight line. So, yeah, real shame, and I apologise if I've now ruined. For some people, this is what happens, that they listen to performances and then realise that they've been auto-tuned, especially when you hear it like this, and it loses a bit of the magic, because you know you're not hearing that person's voice on the night. You're hearing that person's voice going through somebody else's opinion of how they think it should sound and then getting released after that. So yeah, it is a huge shame, but that's unfortunately where we are with the modern day music industry, and since 2007. But anyway, thank you guys for requesting this particular vocal for me to take a look at. I hope you have enjoyed it. As always, let me know what you guys think in the comments section below, and keep the suggestions and requests for future videos coming down there as well. If you did like this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys at the next one. Rock!